Set boundaries. What boundaries am I talking about? I'm talking about setting boundaries with people who have your children in their presence when you are not around. I've told you guys before that your morals, your rules, your standards and values will definitely irritate and annoy some people. There, unfortunately, are parents out here, some who they allow their children to pretty much do what they want, and they don't believe in structure, and they don't believe in a certain level of discipline. And let me further explain to you guys that when you are teaching and training your children and raising them to be a certain way, you have to set boundaries with family members and loved ones and friends or people who you feel are your close associates, because in their presence, when you're not around, they will sometimes project and inflict how they feel and how they do things with their children and in their household on your children. I'm making this video message to let you know, don't be afraid to confront, set boundaries, and have conversations with people who are babysitting your children, who are spending time with your children when you are not around, and those who influence your children, and the ones that your children love, trust, and look up to. Now, you guys have to understand something. Children are not going to be perfect. Children are going to make mistakes. They're going to make certain decisions no matter how well you raise them. But there are certain rules that you make in your house, and you better make sure as the parent or guardian of those children that you're raising and taking care of, that what you're teaching them is so ingrained in them, they cannot be influenced negatively, they cannot be moved, they cannot be persuaded or manipulated to go against the things that you are teaching them, in spite of other people telling them the opposite or even introducing them to the opposite. Let me give you guys a couple of examples. There are some of you as parents or guardians, you may not be in agreement with buying your children soda or pop, whatever you call it, or you're not in agreement with buying fruit juice, store-bought fruit juice. But when they go to a parent's house or auntie's or uncle house or a grandparent's, like I said, a grandparent's house, or just their mentor's house, they allow them to drink pop or fruit juice. Now, I understand what other people do in their household and rules that they set. It's their household, and if your children are going there, they should follow those rules. I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is that if there are particular things that you are teaching your children, you should not allow anybody to go over your head and overstep that boundary and be disrespectful just because they find you to be irritating and annoying in what rules you set. That's what I want you guys to realize and understand in this video message. Because you know what happens in situations like this? In situations where you may tell your child, I want you in the house at 7:30, but when they go to their loved one's house, they're able to come in the house all times of the night. How can you be so sure, if this continues to happen frequently, that when your child comes home, they won't test and try you and come in the house past the time you've trained them to? And train, I know you guys are going to get offended at that word, but you all are not dumb. You know what I mean. If you tell your child to be in the house at 7:30 or 7:45, but they have an auntie or uncle or a grandparent that's saying you can come in the house at 9, 10, or 11 o'clock, things like this can cause dissension and confusion and drama in your house. And when your kids come back to you, they try to rise up and buck up against you because they have got accustomed to doing something different when they go to that family member's or that mentor's house. So all I'm saying is that you guys have to set boundaries. Do not fear conflict. And I'm talking about healthy conflict. I've been called controversial, and I'm not going to say that I'm not controversial. Maybe at some points I am controversial, but I don't fear conflict. I don't fear falling out with people that I care about, respect, and love, because what you're not going to do is go over my head and introduce or tell my child that they can do certain things that I've taught them not to do just because you're not in agreement with it, and because you're free spirited and you allow your kids to do particular things. Now, I know what some of you all are going to say. Well, if you don't agree with how somebody else lives their life, don't let your kids go over there. But how long are you going to keep running, and how long are you going to keep putting a guard and a block in front of your children having a social life with their cousins or with their friends? You mean to tell me boundaries should be removed, and particular things you've taught and trained your child to do, that should just go away because they're at somebody else's house? You mean to tell me if you have raised your children their entire lives to not drink pop or to not drink juice, your child can have a medical condition or something triggers them. They could be a diabetic. Certain things could just go on. So if you have a mentor or a grandparent or auntie or uncle or a friend that's giving your child that pop or that juice or that candy or that cake, and they get sick, who's to blame? So I'm just saying in this video message, certain boundaries have to be set, and you better make sure your child cannot be moved, manipulated, or persuaded to go in another direction outside of what you're teaching them, no matter who is saying and doing what. That's what I'm telling you guys in this video message. Make sure your children are unmovable and respectfully decline when outside people who are watching them or mentoring them and they're trying to project things off on your children. If you do not smoke and drink, just an example, but you have a family member that smokes and drinks and they think it's cute to give your child a hit of some weed or a cigarette or a little bit of alcohol, that should be a problem, because you don't know how your child or how your children are going to act, after being given that opportunity. And when they come home and they start bucking up against you and rising up against you and questioning you about your rules and your regulations that you set in place, that's when that dissension and that confusion comes in. And you shouldn't have to keep arguing and going back and forth with your child because they got exposed to something in the care of somebody else, and now they looking at you like you're the bad parent. They're looking at you like you're the weird parent. They're looking at you like you're too much. Watch who influences your child. I'm not talking about who they watch on TV, rappers and singers. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the very people in your bloodline, the people that you entrust with your flesh and blood. That's what I'm talking about. You have to set boundaries. Don't allow your child to be open to where they can just be moved in a direction because the pressure is on them from other people who are in their life, and they're projecting on them, totally going against what you've taught your children. Well, guys, it's time for me to go. The Lord willing, I will be back with another video message. You guys know I love you. You are my weasels. If you have been offended by anything that I've spoken about in this video message, it's okay, because you will forgive me in the morning.